dear participants, dear colleagues. On my turn today, I would like to greet you and thank you for an opportunity to speak to you and to share some information from the Ukrainian legal perspective. My name is Olena Stakhurska, and I'm managing partner of the Ukrainian Taylor Wessing office. And I'm also the deputy chairman of the APSCo Ukraine, German-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. Also, myself, I left Kiev a month ago and fled like millions of other Ukrainians to different European countries. And I think that was enough for a short introduction, and maybe we can start with the slides to go on further. Okay. The next slide, please. As everyone knows already, the Russian invaded Ukraine on 21st February 2022, being the largest conventional military attack on a European state since World War II. It triggered Europe's largest refugee crisis since that war, with over 3.8 million Ukrainians leaving the country and millions more being internally displaced. I would like to provide you also with some figures. As you see, the recent total population of Ukraine corresponds to half of the German population. With over 10 million Ukrainians displaced across the country or outside, you see that almost a quarter of population refugees to save own lives and predominantly the lives of their children. More than 20 million Ukrainians were directly affected by war, according to the statistics that was provided almost a week ago, where the situation is changing dramatically hourly. The next slide, please. And as many of you know, the European Union has granted immediate temporary protection to Ukrainian refugees, including free entrance to the labor market of the European Union member states. That's why we are also discussing as Germany is one of their states. However, a termination of existing employment in Ukraine was most probably one of the last thoughts of the mind of the displaced persons while searching for a safe harbor out of our home cities and towns. Some of us are still employed with the Ukrainian companies and work remotely, like myself. Some of us most probably are individual entrepreneurs registered in Ukraine and providing their services on an ongoing basis. But there are also some Ukrainians who are searching for jobs to maintain their family lives for the time being. And that's why I'm also highly appreciate on a personal note the initiative you did on a short notice today with this webinar. The next slide, please. I would like also to provide you with an overview of the Ukrainian legal background that should be considered while providing the employment to the Ukrainian displaced persons. I would prefer to call the Ukrainian displaced persons and not necessarily refugees in this situation. All individuals that are engaged under the employment agreement qualify as an employees. In the recent weeks, often we were questioned by our clients if the employee shall terminate the Ukrainian employment of those employees who were provided with a temporary protection in the European Union. Not necessary. The employee shall continue to pay the remuneration to their Ukrainian employees. And the work for displaced persons could be organized remotely, specifically for white-collar professions with communication channels equally to the remote or home work during the COVID pandemic, where everyone learned how to manage. However, if employees cannot execute remote work, there are numerous other ways of employment organization to exclude the termination of employment. What you see also on my slide, I didn't need to read everything on that, like layouts, vacations, and further ideas. Next slide, please. Earlier last week came into force a special law on arrangement of the employment relations during the martial law. I think the next slide, if it's possible. Thank you, Andrea. And during the martial law. And this law will prevail over the general provisions of the effective labor code of Ukraine. Thus, an employment resignation, if the area where the enterprise is located is under attack and the employee's life and health are endangered, would be served at short notice or with immediate effect upon the employee's resignation. For example, Kiev, as a capital of Ukraine, is currently in this situation, and also our office is located in Kiev, and this is considered as a dangerous place to be currently. And on general note, the employee shall provide the employee with a labor book. Labor book is something we have in Russia, in Ukraine, in some other post-Soviet countries. That is a specific book with all employment records of the employee. And currently, this is not physically possible to hand over those books to the employees. Normally, they are kept at the office premises during the employment times. And thus, we recommend to the employees to obtain the written consent that as an exception, the labor book will be handed over once the war is over. And those employees who started their professional path just like last year were able to waive this necessity to have such a labor book. And for others, it remains an essential issue to prove the proper employment termination. Equally to the times during the COVID pandemic, during the martial law, the employment termination can be generally done also during the employee's sick leave or vacation time. New regulation that was introduced by this special law is an alternative to the employees. They are able to suspend their employees instead of terminating them. And subsequently, Russian Federation will be obliged to undertake their employment-related remunerations in full extent. How it will work in practice, we will see once the war will be over. But however, there is also an option that some of the companies are using in Ukraine and trying to suspend their employees if they cannot provide them with the work assignments. But on the other hand, those Ukrainians who are temporarily displaced abroad can also seek for a job, because from the Ukrainian perspective, existing employment relationship does not necessarily prohibit any further employment. And if we have no regulations on further employment abroad, it should be considered as possible. For the next slide, please. If we are talking specifically in IT business, we are talking what was organized in Ukraine. Mainly the civil law agreements on services were entered into, and commonly private entrepreneurs registered in Ukraine using a simplified tax scheme were widely engaged based on the civil law agreements. In this situation, I think I don't need to talk in this round on the difference between employment and civil law agreements. How a contractor undertakes to perform certain work according to a customer's ordering without subordination to the customer, using own or customer materials, and the work is undertaken at the contractor's own risk. In this situation, when we are talking that contractors may terminate their existing services agreements, or they can gain and enter into the other new services agreements. Maybe that would be also an interesting topic to discuss later today during this webinar, because they could serve as Ukrainian private entrepreneurs with payments received at their Ukrainian bank accounts, because another one practical issue was that as Ukrainians, if we open bank accounts abroad, considering Germany, we will be opening them as a physical persons, as a natural persons. And those accounts could not be used for remuneration from the new contracts as a private entrepreneur, because otherwise you will have this other regime of taxation. And Ukrainian banks are still working properly, and Ukrainian entrepreneurs can enter into new service agreements with German companies or with any other companies abroad using their Ukrainian bank details as well, for example. And I think that was those were the main issues from my perspective, what I can deliver. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm also happy to answer your questions regarding the Ukrainian regulations by the end of the webinar, also including about the situation or about the employment regulations, maybe some of you would be interested in. And now I'm looking forward to hear about the positive developments, maybe on simplified employment of the Ukrainian civil specialists in Germany from my colleague, Sebastian. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks. And also a hello from me from Berlin, from Germany, giving you an overview about the situation from the German perspective, also from the legal side, because if you intend to help Ukrainians and displaced persons from the Ukraine, it's useful from my point of view to understand what the legal pitfalls are that you can provide best help as possible. Since February the 24th, we have roughly 253,000 refugees from the Ukraine in Germany. I was last week in the UK. I know that the numbers are significantly different, but here in Germany, over here, it's really a very significant number. More than 250,000 people already in the country. It's a moving situation, so the number is increasing every day. That number again is a couple of days old. Among the Ukrainian refugees, there are very high qualified people and well-trained people from various sectors, from the IT sector, the gaming sector, and pharma and others. So we have a high number of people, really high specialists, speaking very well English. Many of them, as my colleague, perfectly fluent in German too. So it's high qualified people we're talking about coming these days to Germany. It's unclear how long they stay in the Ukraine, in Germany, whether they go to other European countries or whether remain in the country. We still see that many also are in Poland and other countries, but we can expect that a significant number of those displaced persons coming from the Ukraine will remain in Germany for a longer period of time. We see in Germany that many people would like to help, also in regard to employment. And as you are all coming from recruitment agencies, it makes sense to think about if you would like to do something rather than spending money to one of those organizations, maybe make more sense to do what you can, to basically bring people together with end clients and try to give them jobs, right? That they can stay here and earn their own money. What points you should keep in mind? I've put in the slides some legal points as well as some things to consider from a moral basis, what you can do or what you should at least consider. It's a very fluent situation. Information you obtain from authorities, Ausländerbehörde, Social Security authorities, Aliens Office, well, they even don't know the answer. I tried to register refugees by myself. If you call them 3 times, you simply get 3 different answers from different people. So people don't know. We have changed the law a lot for the Ukrainians compared to what we did, for example, in 2015. So it's pretty new for everybody. And don't expect to get accurate information from all of the authorities right away. This will take some time. Yeah. Next slides. It's regularly, if you come from a foreign country, as a normal working person, as a contractor, as a freelancer, or as a refugee, as we have seen in 2015, it was extremely complex. It was extremely hard process. What you need to obtain, what working permit, on what basis are you allowed to work as a freelancer? Are you allowed to work, as a leased employee? That is a very painful and long-lasting procedure. Again, also for refugees in the past. So we have lifted this all. Although Ukraine is not part of the EU, we have make it, at least on the paper, significantly easy for all the refugees or displaced persons from the Ukraine coming here after the 24th of May this year. Unbureaucratic as much as possible to support fast and safety protection, to allow them to come in and to allow them to stay here. Total overload of the immigration offices in 2014 and 15 shall be avoided. That's a wish. My own experience, and I helped and registered Ukrainians myself. with my colleague Loreen. It took us 2 days to register Ukrainian people. I'm an employment lawyer. I do immigration law. I speak German. And for me, it was very hard to do so. I have no idea how an Ukrainian person should do it by themselves without having any knowledge what to do. Yeah? Anyhow, legally, they can do pretty much everything. There is no need for a regular visa. Blue card is not required, and other titles are also not required, but possible and make sense for certain groups of displaced persons if they would like to remain, if they're high qualified, to think about a blue card, for example, to make it more easy for them. But at least right now, it's not necessary. Next slide. Some legal stuff, just to know what their status is in order for you to put you as a recruitment agency in the right place to help them. Refugees from the Ukraine are allowed to stay in Germany without any title until the 24th of May 2022, maybe extended for another 90 days. That means, well, no one is illegal here. If you are not able to get an appointment as a relevant authorities, and again, in Berlin, everything is booked out until mid-April. Yeah? Then it's it's not suching the individual should be worried too much. No one is illegal here, so there is enough time to arrange the paperwork, because everybody knows it is impossible for all of the refugees in Germany these days to get registered and to get all the paperwork done. So first thing, to communicate to displaced employees, persons from the Ukraine, don't panic if you can't register. Yeah? If Ukrainians want to work in Germany, they have to apply for a residence permit at the immigration office of the competent district, which automatically allows them to work. The office will allow the person to work even without a concrete contract or job. Yeah? That means they can basically start to work. Also as a contractor. Yeah? Again, no, don't panic. They can pretty much do everything. There is a period of time where we don't consider it necessary that you have done all the registration right away. As the perm proceedings take time, the refugees will firstly get a letter of confirmation. This includes details about the permission to work. So in the first days or weeks, it was, as I tried with my colleague Loreen for days, impossible to either get an appointment for registration or to register refugees. It's now done by an online, so you get an confirmation one-pager online, and that is sufficient to register for the time being and for the further process. So at least in Berlin, it was possible after a couple of weeks to do it online, to get a very easy process at this point, and this is temporarily sufficient in order to stay and to work for the refugee. Again, they have then time to fully register. No panic is what you should communicate to the refugees. If they are in a state, I think Berlin was one of the first, where you can do it online, very well, then do so. Then in my case, it was at this stage rather easy. Then you have the confirmation, and then you can work further. What does that mean from an recruitment perspective or agency perspective or end client perspective? Well, once that confirmation is obtained and can be provided, pretty much all is fine. It is not the end of the process, but for the time being, it's fine. Yeah? Next slide. Andre, next slide. Yes, a little bit more, what you should gain full employment permission. At the end of the day, the process, that's what we all would like to achieve. That at the end of the day, they will provide you with a residence permit and showing that they can provide. Next point, next slide, please. Just want to also give you a little bit of feeling what refugees will provide you at some point. If you would like to put them in touch with the end clients, for example, with the companies. If the refugee applies for the residency permit but did not get a confirmation right away, they get a so-called Fiktionsbescheinigung, certificate of fiction. This certificate serves as an official temporary identification document for the refugees while he or she or his or her application is being proceeded. That's, I think, some of you are aware of the process before the refugee crisis this year. If no regulation or comments are made on the potential working permit, it is advisable to contact the immigration office and inform them you want to employ the person and double check and confirm. But personally, don't expect too much necessary information from the immigration office these days. This is more a recommendation for, in a couple of weeks when everything is more set up and you can trust or believe in the information that will be provided. How to apply for residence permit on next slide, Andre. Again, it sounds easy. It is not. Yeah? If you intend to help refugees, one step prior of putting them in touch with your end clients, for example, it certainly makes sense to help them to fill out the paperwork. If a refugee does not have the residence permit, which allows them to work, it is possible to help them apply by organizing the process of informing their authority that you want to employ the person. My experience, I mentioned it earlier on the webinar, is quite negative from our authorities. It's a mess of communications they have. If they apply for social benefits in Berlin, in the biggest refugee crisis since 1945, the relevant office in Germany, in Berlin at least, is closed on a Wednesday and on a Friday. So very German and hard to imagine how normal refugees go through the process. Refugees can normally do the applications themselves because now it's also available in Russian language as well as in Ukrainian language. And they do not need any documents provided by the employer. Actually, it's even possible if they have no documents. We see a significant number of refugees basically have no paper, as they couldn't get the paper when they left the country. So they show up here with no passport, for example, and it's possible to register without having passport documents from the Ukraine. They have to go to the local immigration office or apply via online application. Please do online application if possible in the states where in the Bundesland, so in the German state, where are you located. It is not necessary for them to have an apartment with an individual address. An arrival center is sufficient. That's the rule, not 100% the truth. Yes, it's possible to register if you don't have a place to stay for more than 6 months, but if you don't have, then they send you all over the country. For example, if you would like to stay in Berlin because you think that the job opportunities are better, you have to provide an address which confirms that you stay longer than 6 months. Otherwise, they send you right out of Berlin right away to one of the bigger states in Germany where they have less refugees. Next slide.
Sebastian, one question quickly. What is the experience? How long does it take to get this residency permit?
Nobody knows these days. Nobody knows these days. We don't have that experience in the last. It's a question. The register. We are still one step behind. We are still in the process where we try to register. Where you do again. We have the online tool in Berlin for a week maybe. Before it was not possible to get any appointment until mid-April. Now you can register in the online tool just for the registration. So we can't see how long it will take. At this stage, not possible to say. No? Working permits specifies the different possibilities to work. Generally, in deviation to the otherwise strict German immigration regulations, Ukrainian refugees are allowed to summarize, do everything. Yeah, to work as an employee, as a self-employed person, even temporary employment under the AEG is allowed. So I was asked many times years ago, how can we get foreigners into Germany and lease them out? So in the airline maintenance field, for example, they try to hire mechanics from India and then lease them out to their end clients. The answer is, well, if there is no blue card, then it's not possible. Yeah? Again, we lifted this restrictions for Ukrainians, yeah, for displaced persons from the Ukraine, which could be maybe interesting for one or two of your members if you're operating the AEG business. Well, keep in mind, you now can lease them out to end clients without any restrictions if it comes to immigration law. Again, totally different to everything else what we do with other countries. Could be maybe something to be considered for one of your members. They're also allowed to start a business. Yeah, so they can set up business. Again, some personal experience. The refugees I'm helping, they are setting up their own business and do language online courses as their own business. So they take that opportunity. There are tons of opportunities. Again, at the end of the day, they can do more or less do everything, even though they are not, Ukraine is not an EU member. Please note, in some cases, the working permit only allows them to work at one specific company and not for any other employer. Not that likely. Just mention it here because you are recruitment agencies and maybe should be aware and should have a look at what is stipulated there. Next slide. How long does the working permit last? The working permit lasts for 2 years from the date of initial issuance. After this period, a new application, if the Ukrainian intends to stay longer within Germany, must be submitted. That is something for the future going forward. It is still unclear for which period an extension is possible. These days, this is not really relevant at the stage, will come later and they will decide about it. Refugees can apply for other titles, which may allow them to work for a longer period of time. Mentioned the blue card. Yeah. Again, think about that we are talking about a high number of very well-educated employees from the Ukraine, very likely would have been entitled to other titles before the crisis, and this is still, of course, the case. So it could make sense in individual scenarios to think about other titles, more long-term titles, if this is intended, basically.
Sebastian, and if I apply for the normal permit and then for a blue card, does it exclude itself, or is it?
No, can do. Yeah. So again, legally bringing, or for the refugees, it is legally pretty easy. Again, they pretty much can do everything. To summarize, it's these days a bureaucratic burden. So the whole thing in the media, it's totally easy. I personally don't believe it. It's quite tough for them to register, and they need help to do so. But legally, if you once have understood how it works, it's rather straightforward. Good. Next slide.
And there's a question from Emma, Sebastian, for the links for the where to apply online. But I think it's the local Gemeinde, right?
Yeah. Well, it's I'm from Berlin. We don't have Gemeinden in Berlin. Yeah. So in Berlin, we just have the state of Berlin. Yeah, it's a local authorities. Yeah, it depends a little bit on the Bundesland, on the state where you are located, which authority is competent. In Berlin, as we only have the city of Berlin, nothing else. It's just the state ones, but yes, it's the local ones. Yeah. Yeah. Next slide. Oh, but that's okay. Sorry. One slide back. So I skipped one slide. If the refugee has a working permit, you can employ them like every other person. That's normal. Yeah. Like with any other person, it's advisable to check what the documents are, check references, and check the status. At least from your end client side, should we make copies in HR? We now have a very nothing really cares from the authorities these days, so it's not necessary if they're not registered, and so on and so on and so on. Well, we hope they see it in the same way in 3 years if there's an audit. Yeah, so I would do some records if at all possible. I would do in the HR department. I would make copies because we have seen it after the last crisis in 2015 that after a couple of years, maybe things, the point of view has changed, and they ask for papers, which I told you, well, they're not necessary. So be a little bit careful. And yes, on the one hand, don't panic as a refugee or if you help refugees. But on the other hand, I would also cover myself or the end client by saying I check references, I check status, and I provide copies in personal files. Refugees are subject to the same employee protection regulations as other employees. This is important to keep in mind in order to avoid possible claims for damages against companies. What do I mean by that? Well, if you or if your end client is taking someone on board, well, and Olena talked about it, what does that mean? In existing employment relationship, that can certainly cause legal concerns. For example, if you are a software developer as an end client, for example, and you take one Ukrainian software developer on board, yeah, a competitor of maybe the Ukrainian company. Well, could be competitor work if the employment relationship is not terminated under Ukrainian law, or if it's not allowed under the law of the Ukraine. Yeah. So again, we're talking about at least partial high qualified people in the software sector. Yeah. If they develop software, maybe the former employee, the Ukrainian company, has an issue with that if it comes to competitor work. Yeah. So I would highly advise to double check again, more from the end client side, with Olena, for example, or with other legal advisors, if there is such an issue, competitor work, yeah, if this is the same business where they were employed before and after the one, if basically someone shows up at the competitor. Also, employee protection rights, certainly they count for the number if it comes to protection against dismissal act. Yeah? If you take those people on board, of course they are employees and enjoy protection rights as everybody else, because they are allowed to work here and enjoy the full package of German employee protection rights. This is also maybe something relevant if you yourself think about employing refugees in your own company in Germany. Yeah? Next point. So now we cover a little bit what you can do to help, what's possible. Certainly, APSCo member have recruitment experience more than everybody else. Yeah, so you can basically know the job market in the UK, in Germany. So you can provide help here. This can be very valuable support for the employment agencies and Ukrainian refugees. Actually seeking contact with employment agencies following the respective registration of the refugees. So again, help those people a little bit with the whole bureaucratic thing at step one, maybe. Yeah? Any specialized refugee looking for work, what can you do? Offer placement support for your business sector. It's IT, maintenance, pharma. Bring them in touch with your end clients, and then help them with what you can, with basically recruiting. Yeah? Provide them with your contact details, which can be given to the Ukrainian job seekers, and then going up from there. We have seen that pretty much it's possible online to do so, and what you can do there. Next slide. Offering advice and provide support. Support with the application process for the residency permit could be considered. Yeah, if you would like to do any help there. Use your network and contacts. Refugees need to find living spaces, set up bank accounts. We have heard from Olena how difficult it is to set up bank accounts earlier. Support the refugees by writing, reviewing their CV, German, English. That is something I actually do to help. I'm not a recruiter, so I can basically only think what makes sense for me. Yeah, you are 10 times better than me. Yeah, so you can think about offering, candidates, refugees, to double check their CV, to double check their German, yeah, or English, and so on. Explain different types of works and the possibility for them. Again, legally, pretty much everything is possible for them, but they need to understand where is the difference between employment, freelancing, AUG leasing, where we likely never heard of. Yeah, and again, what does that mean for you as an agency? The usual compliance risk. Yeah, also certainly apply here. If you place or if you recommend refugees from the Ukraine to your end clients as freelancers, doesn't mean that you're not liable under the usual compliance risk scenarios. Yeah? So don't forget this. Offer basic legal advice, certainly not legal advice, you're not allowed, because this is only lawyers can do. But with that, such basic legal advice, I was more in mind about how to do this, how to do that, how to apply, just more help rather than legal advice. So offer basic legal help would be maybe more appropriate to mention here as providing legal advice. Next slides. Many clients also currently asking the same questions about the possible support for refugees. Offer the process for free. Open to client-friendly regulations, rebates, and everything. I had more in mind to the perm business here when I was doing the slides. Maybe Sebastian Heck can also from K-Recruiting can also provide some ideas what can be done also in particular in the freelancer market, or what the ideas could there be to help refugees. So I hand over to Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you for that. Hi, everybody. We were thinking about what we can do beside all the job portals who already exist, where companies who are engaged already post their job offers online. And we were thinking about just bringing the displaced Ukrainians to the companies itself. So we were thinking about collecting their CVs, their profiles, and sort them. First of all, is it a candidate for perm or is it a candidate for contracting? Which branch is his specialization? Is he a T specialist? Is it more than it's more pharma, pharmaceutical, or anything? And just provide their CVs to the clients themselves, and it doesn't really matter if it's a perm contract, if it's a perm application, or a perm applicant, or if he's a freelancer. We just need to use our contacts directly to the clients, and we have to think about on which terms we can do this service. I think in the perm business it should be no problem to do it completely free, because we just hand over the CVs and we just support the application process itself. And contracting business, we should reduce everything to the minimum, just to help them to get into their projects. I would recommend we all do it completely for free. We just need to get in touch with all the people who are already helping. I saw in the audience that, for example, Matthias is there as well, and I personally know that he was on a tour to the Ukrainian border. But I think we all can do some more to help here. So we need to establish contact to all the points of contact in the different cities. Here in Munich, there are different Aufnahmelager. And I know that there are a lot of people working there who could be our point of contact to collect the CVs to offer our services. We need some people in our organizations who get the CVs, who do a workover, who could sort them whether to perm or a contracting business. And afterwards, we should be able to communicate to our clients and explain how they could employ or employ them as a freelancer for the future time. If it's 3 months, or if it's 2 years, or if it's for a longer term, that shouldn't be the question at the moment.
I think it's a great initiative from your company and yourself, Sebastian. And as we spoke before, this is an event, and this is the reason why you and Sabina are here. From APSCo, I think we have the perfect platform for the staffing companies to offer this kind of frame. So let's speak about a matrix: temp, contract, permanent, the skill, pharma, IT, engineering. And then we find companies like K-Recruiting, which fill in one slot in the matrix, and we go in and out. And marketing, we're going to speak to LinkedIn. They are newly affiliate members. I think they're going to support the cause. Therefore, we start to market out these opportunities, and the displaced persons get aware about that there are staffing agencies helping them to find the right job and to find a leverage via this way, and then to support the process and find the people for the time being or for the future, the job. I think that's a very good initiative where we play our strengths, because Sebastian is totally right. So Sebastian Buder, we are the experts in how a CV should look like, and not the legal attorney from Tyler Wessing. So if there's any kind of interest, I think Sebastian, Heck, we can discuss the people who like to participate in this initiative can stay in the call, and we discuss after the Q&A session, or approach myself or Sebastian, and we're gonna collect the interested people.
I'm certainly more than happy to also participate. I'm not the recruitment expert, but maybe you can give some legal help here and there. So as said, more than happy to also help with that project because it's a very extremely good idea.
Perfect.
Good. So some legal concerns. Also some if the recruiter basically is also liable for the right documents. So is the recruiter liable if the refugee does not provide the right documents? As said before, it's a bit of chaos what you exactly need at what stage, as it's still unclear from authorities what they say. So the question basically is, if you help, which is super, yeah. I would like to exclude that you're liable at the end of the day at the recruitment agency if there are mistakes in the documents because one of us, you, myself, or the end client or the refugee has obtained incorrect information. Yeah. So next slide, please. At least if we are talking about the perm business, it's basically a broker contract legally, so a Maklervertrag, and it's the question what you agree to be liable for in your terms also with your end client. So normally, well, it's just the introduction of the end client and not liable for the documents what you do. But we have seen terms where it's differently. So double check if you also do this and you are unclear because of the unclear situation, what documents are correct, yeah? What reference letters are there which you can't double check, that you don't have any obligation to do so in your terms. And recently a big case where this was a significant issue. So double check if there is anything in. If there is nothing, oh fine, don't care, yeah. But if there is anything, please double check that you maybe change this for this specific scenario, because pretty much you can't be liable for that. It's too unclear. In particular, if yeah, documents are provided from the Ukraine. Next slide.
Yeah, but it's definitely a relative topic for temp, right? Mit Auswahlverschulden, if you do not know if this is a Techniker or Mechaniker and what is his background, that's definitely
exactly
something to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've recently seen terms where it was specifically agreed that the agency has to double check the reference letters. Yeah? So it's again, obviously those things exist, and please double check if there are. It's impossible for you to do so because from Ukraine, yeah, that you're not liable at the end of the day. Yeah. Last but not least, some moral aspects with respect to the Ukraine from the Ukrainian perspective. Please, Olena, please. Yeah, please correct me if this is not the right, if this is not true. At least what I think what should be considered also is the Ukrainian point of view, that certainly if you place permanently high-skilled people from the Ukraine in Germany, this also has an impact on the economy in the Ukraine. Very likely they will not go back, and this will have a significant disadvantage for the market, for the economy in the Ukraine after the war. Again, as we're talking about to high extent of high qualified people, at least you should keep this in mind. What does that mean for your activities? Certainly from my point of view, cannot mean that you do not help the refugees yet, yeah? But maybe it means that, yeah, we should work, for example, with, or you should engage your end clients to work with, fixed employment contracts for a certain duration of time. Andre, when you can please also show the rest of the slides. Yeah, so fixed term in employment could be a way forward. Just wanted to flag at once. Keep in mind what that means to employ high qualified people from the Ukraine on a long-term basis here with German companies and pay taxes into the German system rather than the Ukrainian system after the war. Just to also wanted to reflect this. I've heard from Poland, for example, that they're actively saying this also in the media. We're looking for high qualified people also for our own economy, and they talk about it openly. So helping on one side also has an impact on the Ukrainian economy. Yeah, again, does not mean from my point of view that you don't help Ukrainians temporarily, but just mention it.
Sebastian, there's a question about this tax after you receive the Fiktionsbescheinigung, you don't have a tax number. You said we can employ straight away. Can we therefore defer income tax and social tax until the tax number arrives?
Good question, very good question. Again, not all of this question we have an answer because it's totally new for all of us. Yeah, that I need to double check how that works with the tax perspective. I was of the opinion that the tax number will be provided rather soon too, but yes, there will be a time gap. That's for sure. Yeah? I need to double check what the position there is. One of those questions which we have never been faced with before that crisis.
But I think normally what you see from the payrolling aspect, payrolling can be adjusted in the second month as well, right?
Yeah.
So you do not want...
If you have the tax number in the second month, right? Which
exactly.
Is, if you see the high number, also very doubtful. If you get an appointment in the second month.
Yes, true. Okay. Are we now in the question and answer part, Sebastian?
So. Yeah.
There's another question, and now to everyone, so this is the time you can ask all your questions. Either you flag your hand symbol and then you can speak, and I'm going to unmute, or you write your question. So Matthias is asking, as an agency, how long are we allowed to store data like resident permits in regards to DSGVO?
As long as you are needed to bring this contractual relationship to an end. Depends a little bit on the duration of time with the end client, as long as the placement is and so on. As long as you normally, not for the refugees where you don't expect to charge fees, but normally would say as long as all fees have been paid, yeah, and as long as anything can pump up in that contractual relationship, yeah, solange es für die Durchführung des Vertrages erforderlich ist.
Okay, thanks. Another question from Tobias. Is there already a way platform to get in touch with Ukrainian specialists who are open to work?
That's more a recruitment question.
Yeah, I think Sebastian already answered it.
Yeah, I guess there are a lot of job platforms at the moment. I think APSCo has one big, then Job Aid Ukraine is one, but it's all the same. You have the job offers from the companies posted there, and the Ukrainian people can apply there. So there is some kind of possibility to get in touch there, but I guess there's no overall opportunity to send in just their CVs like in initial application. So I guess this could be something we, at least with a one email address or anything, we could provide in combination with a marketing campaign via LinkedIn, and we just have one functional mailbox where all these CVs could be sent to and then sorted out afterwards.
Yeah.
I can suggest from my side as well, we can spread the information once it will be available through the APSCo Ukraine channel as one of the opportunities once it's ready. Another situation would be the Ukrainian embassies and consulates across Germany. What I see and what I'm experiencing, also based in Vienna, that Ukrainian embassy in Austria posting a lot of job opportunities as well for bigger companies and so on. So it would be also the channels that Ukrainians are following regularly, in addition to LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think I do not know if you agree, Olena, but when I'm hearing what Sebastian said and understanding my sister helped her family as well, I think what the staffing companies can really help, I think, is a local support. I think the downside of the job platform is that post jobs all over Germany, but the people are in Munich or in Regensburg or in Würzburg or in Hamburg. And I think what really is the help, what the staffing agencies we can do at the moment is to help them really to take them at the hand and help them to get registered, because it's really long-winded and complicated, and getting the CVs right and getting them in front of the employer, the local employer, and helping them maybe for all the other stuff which is relevant to find a living and stuff like this. I think that's really the initiative which Sebastian Heck, I think, is aiming towards. So maybe one question from my side. I see Tobias or Richard is this initiative what Sebastian is doing for K-recruiting? What do you see your companies participating there? Is this from interest? Is there general interest for that from any one of the participants? Open question. Yes. Yes. I have 2 yes. That's good. Okay, so we're going to catch up later then, maybe with Sebastian, and try to get something rolling pretty quickly, because I think this help needs supported ASAP and not in a month also. So I appreciate your support.